he has also taken the vote and the political support of the gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender community for granted, as though to pretend that the immigration crisis is not at all related to the safety and well-being of LGBT people. And we know that, like, right now, there's an estimated 267,000 undocumented, like, gay, lesbian, bi, and trans people who are also in detention, who are also in deportation, who are also being deported back to some pretty violent circumstances in their own home countries and right across the U.S.-Mexico border. And so we know that, to me, I'm like, there's several things that he has already taken for granted, and like the Latino vote, to me, is just one of them. But this assumption that his policies right now, like, he can continue to sort of talk out of both sides of his mouth at this point. Like, I think it's also something that we're calling into question, that for us, like, you cannot continue to put all of the blame on a Congress that is impeding progress. You cannot continue to put all of the blame only on them, knowing well that your signature actually can be the thing that changes the political reality, not just the political, but the reality of so many of our people's lives right now. And he has the power to do it, and he has been unwilling to do that.
Do you think that a path to citizenship is less important at this moment than the deportation crisis?
I think, to me, it's a tactical question. It's a tactical question about what is actually politically possible right now.
Yes.
And we are being told by and far, like far and wide, that like CIR is not politically possible right now. So for us, since our priority is not just some political argument that should be won at any cost, but the reality of the pain and suffering and separation that our people are experiencing, we have to strategically pivot to talk about the deportation crisis, because that's the thing that he's unwilling to talk about, that he is unwilling to name, and that he is unwilling to change any of the, even like base level practices, because we know ICE is already a rogue agency. We know that he wouldn't even have to issue mandates about practices if they were already doing their job the way that it was laid out. And so for us, like, we know that it's an agency that he hasn't been able to rein in. It's rogue. They're like, we know that like some of the things that like already been put in terms of low priorities, attentions, they're working against it. That's not what they're doing in effect. And so that's also part of what's at play right now. Sorry.
See, no. And also, we can no longer wait. We are about to have 2 million people that have been processed for deportation since 2009. And I think it's a matter of, on terms of human rights right now. The separation of families is increasing every single day. We will pay a very high cost due to the separation of children from their parents. And I don't think it's a matter at this point if we want citizenship. We all want citizenship. We all want immigration reform. And the point here is, if it is the political willingness right now to do so, is the Republican Party as well, the Democrat Party, willing to compromise in order to save the human rights or to vindicate immigrant rights as well? That's the question.
And then also just a question of attrition, that like they're making it so insufferably hard for our people to remain here, that it's like, okay, so when comprehensive immigration reform comes to pass, it's only going to affect the people that are able to survive the harshest enforcement, the worst racial profiling, the longest detentions, and the longest detentions before being deported back to their countries. And so it's also just like, he just has to be realistic that if he's talking about, who is it for? Who is it for? If it's not for the immigrant undocumented community that is here today and suffering now, then who is it for? Because this assumption that it's going to affect some future scenario, I'm like, our people are suffering right now. And the crisis is real, which is why we continue to even call it a crisis. And that's the part that we have to wonder if that part of it is lost on him. Does he realize? Is he in full like understanding and concept about what's actually happening in our communities? That for us, like, we're beyond the rhetoric right now. He needs to go and visit detention centers and see the conditions that people are living in. He needs to talk to the families of people who have people on the inside to see the kind of even basic inhumane treatment that people are suffering, the things that people have to do inside of detention centers in order to be able to eat. What our like trans and queer and gender nonconforming people have to do in order to be able to have a little bit of safety when there is none guaranteed. And I'm just like, there's just a disconnection. And we, like, as someone in leadership who speaks on behalf of the whole country, when he goes outside of the U.S. to talk about the human rights crisis that's happening right now in Ukraine, when he's talking about the human rights crisis that's happening in Russia, there's a human rights crisis in your backyard, in your home, and we want you to address it as much as you're prioritizing hopping around the rest of the world, talking about everybody else's human rights crisis.
¿Alguna otra pregunta?
Adelina, tengo entendido que va a haber una manifestación el 5 de